everyone. We are Group 6 for the Senior Seminar in Environmental Science, July of 2026. I am Taylor, and I will be starting off our presentation explaining invasive species and their impacts, as well as introducing our research on the emerald ash borer. My group partner Lance will be narrating the second half of our presentation, focusing on the consequences and mitigation of the emerald ash borer in the wild. For our research, we utilized the IMAP Invasives tool to map out the spread of the emerald ash borer in the eastern West Virginia region. Since invasive species are typically introduced unintentionally and through human activity, they have no natural enemies in the environment they take up. This allows them to reproduce rapidly and go unchecked until their numbers are out of control. They interrupt biodiversity, nutrient cycles, water quality, economic stability, and native species populations. Invasive species frequently outcompete native species for resources, as well as prey on them. This alters habitat structures and disrupts essential ecosystem services. The decline in native species populations reduces ecosystem resilience and creates ecological gaps that help facilitate the establishment of other non-native species. These gaps are referred to as canopy gaps. They can also encourage further invasions and accelerate ecosystem degradation by modifying the soil, water, and nutrient dynamics. Invasive species severely threaten biodiversity through competition, predation, and disease vectors. They are considered one of the leading threats to endangered and threatened species, second only to habitat loss and overexploitation. When an invasive species is established, it often outcompetes native species for vital resources such as food, space, and light. They can grow faster, reproduce more quickly, or tolerate environmental conditions native species cannot, making it easier for them to spread and thrive at the expense of native species. Native species often experience rapid population declines because they have not evolved defenses against these foreign predators. Even species who have been introduced to help repair an ecosystem can rapidly become a problem. For example, the multicolored Asian lady beetle, which was introduced to help control aphids. It is now an invasive species that preys on native lady beetles, leading to a rapid decline in the native species population. They can introduce pathogens like fungi and bacteria that native species have not evolved defenses against, further leading to the decline in native populations. Invasive plant species can change nitrification rates and pH levels in soil within months of introduction. This can affect nutrient cycling, increase nitrogen availability, and potentially contaminate groundwater through leaching. The difference in leaf litter traits of invasive species can influence soil carbon content. This can promote nitrogen-fixing bacteria and increase soil nitrate concentrations, disrupting natural nutrient balances. Water quality can also be impacted by invasive species, as they increase water clarity and reduce vital nutrient concentrations. The reduction in these nutrients leads to reduced aquatic plant growth, which leads to food shortages for native aquatic herbivores and disrupts the aquatic food web, ultimately decreasing native species abundance and biodiversity. Although our presentation focuses on the emerald ash borer, this process shows how an invasive species can impact an entire ecosystem in multiple ways. Invasive species damage crops, cause extensive timber losses, just as the emerald ash borer does, as we will discuss in this presentation, and clog infrastructure. $1.22 trillion of economic cost associated with invasive species is attributed to the United States alone, out of the $1.288 trillion in North America as a whole. They pose a multifaceted threat to global ecosystems, impacting everything from the microscopic soil community to large-scale economic systems. The approach to addressing the invasive species issue should focus on prevention, control and restoration efforts to mitigate their widespread and often irreversible damage. The emerald ash borer, commonly abbreviated as EAB, is an invasive wood-boring beetle native to Asia that was first discovered in North America near Detroit, Michigan in 2002. Since its introduction, the insect has spread across much of the eastern United States and has become one of the most destructive invasive forest pests ever recorded. Unlike many forest insects that weaken trees over time, emerald ash borer typically kills untreated ash trees within 2 to 5 years of infestation. This has resulted in widespread ecological changes, billions of dollars in management costs, and significant impacts to both urban and natural forests. Because eastern West Virginia contains extensive mixed hardwood forests with naturally occurring ash populations, understanding how emerald ash borer spreads and how forests recover has become an important environmental management issue. Rather than simply describing emerald ash borer, our project focused on evaluating current scientific evidence to determine what rehabilitation strategies are most effective after infestation has occurred. We also wanted to examine whether human activities contribute more to emerald ash borer spread than natural dispersal and identify management practices that are practical for public agencies, municipalities, and private landowners in eastern West Virginia. We chose to focus on the eastern West Virginia area because it contains extensive hardwood forests, important recreation areas, and transportation corridors that increase opportunities for emerald ash borer movement. Human transportation of firewood, nursery stock, and other wood products has consistently been identified as one of the primary drivers of emerald ash borer expansion. This region also contains significant public lands where forest rehabilitation efforts can be evaluated over long periods of time. The areas surrounding eastern West Virginia are seeing a rapid spread in the emerald ash borer population. The destructive stage of emerald ash borer is the larval stage, rather than the adult beetle. After eggs hatch, larvae tunnel beneath the bark where they feed on the phloem and cambium tissues responsible for transporting water and nutrients throughout the tree. As these galleries increase, they effectively girdle the tree from the inside. Characteristic D-shaped exit holes become visible when adults emerge, and by this point the infestation is usually well established. Because damage occurs internally, infestations are often difficult to detect during the early stages. The beetles can typically only travel a few miles annually on their own. It is the human intervention that helps them travel long distances over a short period of time. The importance of ash trees extends far beyond its value as a timber product. Ash trees provide shelter for numerous birds, mammals, amphibians, and insects while contributing to nutrient cycling and stabilizing riparian ecosystems. In urban environments, mature ash trees provide shade that reduces summer energy consumption while improving air quality and aesthetics. Their loss therefore produces both ecological and economic consequences that continue long after the trees have died. As of 2022, the National Park Service reports that the emerald ash borer has been responsible for the death of nearly 300,000 ash trees in the National Capital Region. The National Capital Region Inventory and Monitoring Program collected data showing there are fewer than 56,000 ash trees alive in the area as a result. Our project combined two complementary approaches. First, we performed a literature review using recent peer-reviewed scientific publications focused on the emerald ash borer ecology, spread, management, and rehabilitation. Second, we used IMAP invasives to examine reported emerald ash borer observations and distribution patterns throughout eastern West Virginia. Combining field observations with published research allowed us to compare current infestation patterns with the recommendations reported in the scientific literature. We focused on topics related to treatment, prevention, impacts, and mitigation of the emerald ash borer specifically, while also providing research on the impacts of invasive species as a whole. One of the clearest findings from both the mapping data and scientific literature is that the emerald ash borer does not spread randomly across the landscape. While adult beetles are capable of flying short distances, the greatest jump in infestation occurs because people unknowingly transport infested firewood, logs, nursery stock, and other untreated wood products. This explains why infestations frequently appear near highways, campgrounds, urban centers, and recreational areas before spreading into surrounding forests. Eastern West Virginia experiences significant recreational traffic through state parks and the Monongahela National Forest, making early detection especially important. The infestation process happens quickly. Within weeks, the adult beetles lay larvae and then begin to destroy the ash trees. The mortality rate associated with emerald ash borer is unlike almost any other forest insect currently affecting North America. Once larvae successfully establish beneath the bark, ash trees generally cannot survive without treatment. The rapid loss of mature canopy trees changes light availability, soil moisture, and overall forest composition. In many recreational forests, dead ash also becomes significant safety hazards because standing dead trees are more likely to fall during storms or high winds, increasing management costs for public land agencies. Literature consistently concludes that no single treatment is capable of eliminating emerald ash borer. Instead, successful management combines multiple complementary strategies through an integrated pest management framework. High-value ash trees may be preserved using systemic insecticides, while biological control agents help suppress beetle populations over broader landscapes. Public education and restrictions on moving untreated firewood reduce new infestations, and long-term forest rehabilitation focuses on increasing overall forest diversity to improve resilience against future invasive species.
Hello, my name is Lance, and we're going to be jumping right into the ecological consequences. The ecological impacts extend far beyond the loss of a single tree species. As ash trees disappear, increased sunlight has the potential to reach the forest floor, creating ideal conditions for invasive shrubs and other plants. Species such as bush honeysuckle and garlic mustard often expand rapidly into these newly opened areas, and this second invasion can permanently alter forest regeneration by outcompeting native seedlings, making long-term rehabilitation significantly more difficult than simply replacing lost ash trees. Although the emerald ash borer directly attacks ash wood trees, the ecological effect ripples throughout the ecosystem. Mature ash wood provides nesting cavities, food sources, and structural habitat for numerous wildlife species. While some woodpeckers temporarily benefit from increased beetle larvae, long-term habitat quality generally declines in mature ash disappearance. The changes influences everything from bird diversity to amphibian habitat. Just some of the species affected: woodpecker, cavity nesting birds, small mammals, amphibians, native insects, as well as ecosystems, reducing nesting habitats, food web distributions, change in biodiversity, altered forest microclimate. Continuing on the economic impacts, emerald ash borer represents not only the ecological crisis, but also an economic one. Municipal governments spend substantial amounts removing hazardous trees, replacing urban canopies, and protecting high-value specimens. Research consistently shows that preserving healthy ash through preservation insecticide treatments is often considerably less expensive than waiting until the tree dies and requires the removal process. The loss of mature urban canopy also increases energy loss by reducing shade around homes and businesses. Billions of dollars in the project management costs, municipal budgets heavily impacted by tree removal, timber value declines, increases cooling systems, property value decrease, especially after you lose a substantial amount of the actual canopy. Now, as for the human influence on the spread, one of the most interesting findings from the literature is that ash abundance alone does not accurately predict emerald ash borer occurrence. Instead, areas with greater human activity frequently experience earlier infestation because people unknowingly transport infested materials across long distances. Public education campaigns encouraging people to purchase firewood locally remain one of the simplest yet most effective management tools currently available. Firewood transport, nursery stock, logging operations, wood processing, campgrounds, and road systems accelerate infestation or have the largest contributions to it. Wood transportation variables explained approximately 43 to 44% of the emerald ash borer occurrence probability, at least in the mid-Atlantic modeling studies. Now, as for being able to track this information, one of the most exciting developments identified during literature review involves the use of drones equipped with AI to deep learn rather than relying exclusively on ground surveys. A lot of researchers demonstrated that drones could accurately identify declining ash trees while simultaneously generating GPS coordinates and health assessments for individual trees. This technology has tremendous potential for agencies managing large forest landscapes, such as those found throughout all over eastern West Virginia and other states in the surrounding area. Based on drone detection, obviously it relies on artificial intelligence, deep learning, drone imagery, GPS mapping, but a lot of benefits can come from it. Earlier detection, great accuracy, reduced survey costs, access to remote terrain, and individual tree monitoring. So what do the results mean? After reviewing both the scientific literature and mapping data, one conclusion became more clear than the other. Emerald ash borers should not simply be viewed as an insect problem. Instead, it should be more represented as a long-term forest ecosystem issue that requires active management before, during, and after infestation. Once ash mortality reaches high levels, simply removing the dead trees does little to restore the ecosystem function. Successful rehabilitation requires planning, years of complete canopy loss, currents, and the shift from reactive management towards proactive restoration was one of the strongest things that came to light through all of the research. Emerald ash borer has fundamentally changed the eastern hardwood forests. Human-assisted spread continues to outpace natural dispersal. Forest recovery depends on early intervention rather than reactive management. Long-term rehabilitation is necessary even after the beetle populations decline. So, looking more at a research, monitoring, management, and then rehabilitation. So, on the topic of forest rehabilitation, it extends well beyond replacing trees that have already died. Scientists increasingly recommend protecting healthy ash whenever possible, while simultaneously encouraging greater species diversity during reforestation efforts. Mixed hardwood forests are naturally more resilient than forests dominated by only one or two species. Long-term monitoring is equally important because rehabilitation does not end once new trees are planted. Forest managers must continue evaluating and taking in data of the regeneration success, invasive plant establishment, and overall ecosystem recovery for many years after infestation. The main goal or goals of forest rehabilitation: promote natural regeneration, increase native tree diversity, reduce invasive understory, and able and take a forest stand and allow it to adapt to what is new or existing. So we talked about forest rehabilitation, and now I want to touch on the subject of recommendation. Based on the literature, several management actions consistently appear to provide the greatest benefit. High-value ash trees should be treated before infestation reaches advanced stages. Public education campaigns encouraging residents and visitors not to move firewood remain one of the least expensive and most effective methods for slow spread. Continued biological control efforts and improvements in early detection technologies, including drones, AI, provide promising opportunities to improve future management across eastern West Virginia. Though expanding education on the subject as a whole would far exceed many of the efforts. Increase of cooperation among several different agencies, and being able to have access to the drone monitoring detection systems would make it far easier to rehabilitate a lot of our natural forests. Now, perhaps one of the most important findings throughout all of the literature involves economics. Multiple studies conclude that protecting healthy ash trees before infestation becomes severe is significantly less expensive than removing dead trees afterwards. Mature trees provide decades of ecosystem service that can't be immediately replaced by newly planted seedlings. As a result, preventative management often provides a higher ecological and financial return, especially when widespread mortality has already occurred. Cost of action versus cost of inaction. Tree removal cost is quite high. Long-term benefit is quite low. Tree replacement cost is high. Long-term benefit is moderate. Forest rehabilitation, relative cost, moderate. Long-term benefit, very high. So if you have preventative insecticide treatments available, the relative cost can be low, depending on the stand's width or acreage, but the long-term benefit is extremely high. Now, piggybacking off of the advancements of technology, technology is rapidly changing how invasive species are monitored. Traditional ground surveys require significant time, labor, making it difficult to inspect large forested landscapes. Recent research demonstrates that combining drone imagery and artificial intelligence can rapidly identify declining ash trees while automatically generating detailed maps for land managers. As these technologies continue improving, they will likely become standardized tools for agencies responsible for protecting forests, especially throughout the Appalachian region. Intelligence, machine learning, drone surveys, remote sensing, LiDAR abilities, satellite monitoring, GPS tree inventories. Like all scientific studies, this project has limitations. The emerald ash borer continues spreading throughout the eastern United States, meaning current distribution maps represent only a snapshot in time. Many observation records also depend on reporting by the public and resource agencies. In addition, management strategies that are highly successful in urban forests may be difficult to implement across vast or remote public lands. These imitations highlight the importance of continued monitoring and additional research. Having the ability to have long-term monitoring data, mapping observations, forest conditions, effective management may allow for ash trees to flourish. The emerald ash borer has become one of the most significant invasive forest insects affecting eastern North America. While complete eradication is unlikely, research demonstrates that early detection, integrated management, and proactive rehabilitation can subsequently reduce ecological and economic impacts. Perhaps the most important lesson from this project is that protecting forest resilience requires managing ecosystems as a whole, rather than focus solely on eliminating the insect itself. Now, if I could say one final takeaway, or one final message, we hope you remember this presentation and seek out your own research in successful management of forests. It doesn't simply end when emerald ash borer populations decline. Rehabilitation should become the long-term objective, restoring diverse, resilient forests while protecting remaining trees. We think it provides the greatest opportunity for maintaining a healthy ecosystem throughout the East Coast, and especially West Virginia. As invasive species continue expanding across North America, lessons learned from the emerald ash borer management will help prepare forest managers and forest overseers for future biological invasions. Early detection can only go so far. Protection of remaining healthy ash, biological control, public education, native forest restoration, when you combine all of those things, healthy ecosystems can thrive.